Welcome to the booktube tag, judging books by their covers, which I thought would be a quick, simple tag to do, and lo and behold it became a canyon of books laid out on the floor. Please imagine the music from film 2001 because it's rather overwhelming. So if my channel had a motto, it would probably be all the arts all the time. And so this tag is perfect. It's looking at what's going on with the text, with the font in which it's used, the way that font is displayed on the page, with illustrations, with the format of how the words go on the spine. I think it's extremely intermedial. It's involving lots of different media, lots of different art, and trying to find the best way to express a book, an idea, a story. So much to enjoy, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Number one, best colour combination on the cover. I want to propose the Penguin Book of Women's Humour. Look at the nice colour, the bright pink, the black, very graphic, and then there's orange on the side. And again, you get two women faces smiling, which is rather lovely. And on the back, I love the sense of humour, where you have a woman kind of holding the cigar like Groucho Marx, but it's a woman. And so I recommend the Penguin's Book of Women's Humour. Then a cover that's very, very quietly coloured, but I love the way the text goes into the waters. God-Soaked Life by Chris Webb. Rather nice. It does continue around the spine, a little bit in the back, but I think the way the font goes behind the words and is soaked is rather appropriate. And of course, we have to refer to this set of books. These new editions, new reprintings of classics, in this particular case, The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. And I think these illustrations are done by a particularly fantastic Scottish printer. I'm now going to have to squint at the book. The designer, Angie Lewin. Yes, Angie Lewin. If you don't know her prints, this is really quite symptomatic of her work, and it's amazing, astounding and wonderful, especially of wild plants and so forth. And I love this book, by the way, as well, Enchanted April. It's my default book to give, to recommend, and especially to women. And it's a fantastic, humorous and delightful story in which women's lives change through their friendship and through going abroad to Italy. That's the cover colour. Next we move to the fonts. So if we're going to talk about fonts, we absolutely must cover this book, Just My Type, a book about fonts itself by Simon Garfield. And interesting change of colour. And I have to give you a flick of the book to see how the book is done, because every single page is interesting. End papers are interesting as well. And then the whole book is going to let you see varieties of different ways in which letters are made, the stories of the fonts, even a place where you can find online what a letter is. When you find one, what font does it belong to? And I recommend that to you as a good general read of interest, because after all our books are made out of type, and sometimes you lift up the book that's been printed and you have an instantaneous reaction where you think, oh, this book is going to be hard to read, the lettering's small and mean, or it's too spaced out, and that gives you the effect that possibly the person who wrote it has written less than they maybe should have done, and that they're trying to make it look bigger and brighter. So much goes on with what shape the lettering is, what the line spaces are between and so forth, whether it looks generous and inviting or it looks like something that you feel is going to bring on a migraine. Letters of note are other kinds of lettering, which is the ones we humans make, our own handwriting, which is very appropriate because this book is all about letters that have been written, correspondence deserving of a wider audience, and it's compiled by Sean Usher. I would also say it's been curated by him, because he has not only chosen the letters, he shows them, he reproduces them. I will have to do an overhead with the camera to let you see inside. because you can see people's handwriting and their typing is going to appear. Photographs of them, the context in which the letter was written, who the correspondents were, what time it was, what year, what was going on, and even people's handwriting if you like to get a feel of a person from that. Extraordinary letters, happy, sad, confessional, advising, telling history, their part in it, and people you love or don't like, or even fear in some cases, and what they disclosed in their letters. So I recommend that to you, Letters of Note. It is large. This is not one that is easy in the hand, but it's worth spreading out on a table and enjoying each letter written by different persons, so a different character. Now, to do with fonts, I like this book, The Spirit of Early Christian Thought. I toyed with having it as the spine being the important part, because what I actually love is the loop between the S and the T, which I would have to go back to Simon Garfield to find out what exactly it's called, but it is a very old form of lettering used in printing, and I quite liked it. Next, a completely different book, and one big coffee table book, which is Legendary Authors and the Clothes They Wore, Note the Typewriter. And indeed, many of the writers in this would have used a typewriter because their writing predated computers. See writers in their clothes together. The whole layout of the book is fabulous. You get little quotes that are inset, and the writers span decades in their writing. They're how famous they were, the quotes. It's a kind of a who's who of who has been writing, especially in the 20th century. And a visual delight to look at. Beautifully, beautifully produced. So the font is what is striking at the start. And next we have S.J. Perelman, who wrote a lot of the jokes that were around the time of the Marx Brothers. This is about his earlier writings when he was a student mostly. That Old Gang of Mine, the early and essential S.J. Perelman. Excuse me. Because he wrote for college magazines when that was a thing. And it's here for fonts because that's the colourful cover. And you take that off. You get to see the lettering on the spine, which is very typical of the 1920s, 1930s. And I love it very much. In fact, the colour's quite nice, and it's been well protected by the colourful cover they've kept on it. Lots of people have done this tag, but there's not too much contribution from the ebooks, and perhaps Steve Donaghy would like to speak to that as to why there is less to talk about when it's an ebook and there's not a spine, there's not end papers maybe, and there isn't lots of design elements. And other people who are fans of ebooks as well might like to comment. I personally find this brought me back to the feel, the look, the feel and the heft of a book. The dimensions of a book to me are quite important, because a really good book feels like something you could slip into a handbag or literally hold in your hand and open at any point, and the words and would just open up to you. And yes, I know that form exists with an ebook, that you can carry things and they're portable, but I find personally that ebooks are sensory deprivation. So much we miss that we celebrate in this tag. Best simple cover would be this one, Selfie by Will Storr. How we became so self-obsessed and what it's doing to us. And when I came across this in a bookshop, this was one of the few books where the cover actually strongly enticed me to buy it. The feeling that if someone had the sort of sense of what a selfie actually is enough to make a cover like this, then the book would be worth reading. So the book is interesting, but I must say it's quite bitsy piecey. It feels like a collection of different articles written for a magazine pulled together, so vastly different stories in it. It's a bit uneven, but the book cover is brilliant. Literally brilliant. Shining. Second one for the simple cover design. This. So you don't just have the words, you also have this finger. The medium is a massage fingers, get it? By Marshall McLuhan with Quentin Fiore. The whole book I love because it has so many pictures in it. It is a wonderful mix of words and pictures because that's what it's saying. The 20th century is for us. It is this blend of words and pictures. So the book design really matches the message, the massage, and it's a classic worth having and worth thinking about. We're now in 4 out of 12. This is the end papers. Isle of Noises, Daniel, Rachel. Conversations with great British songwriters, and there's their names on the cover. So there's a beautiful simplicity about that. Light grey and then this edging of colour which hints at what's going to happen when you open the cover and get the colours. And that sense of lots of different colours and flavours of music that are covered in this. Wonderful book. I like it. I like, again, the design where you will see were words of songs that went on to become classic lyrics, scribbled down in margins on all sorts of bits of paper. And this is actually chord, yes. A diary entry which is actually chords for a song. So in other cases it's words for the song. Almost on the back of fag packets, not quite, they needed a bit more space, but you can see the cross eyes, you can see how the words began to form into something, and even playlists, what tunes you're going to have on your albums or in your performances. So I totally recommend this. Big, huge coffee table book, not small, light in the hand, but look at the names on the front. And if you're a songwriter, you might be interested in the interviews that are with these people, how they wrote their music, how they were inspired, lengthy interviews, not just a pretty face in a way. Even Johnny Watt wasn't particularly accused of being a pretty face, but you get long interviews, so you're not just getting rehashed old interviews done with Pop magazine or something. It's about celebrity. It's actually people writing about the music they wrote. End papers, the flavour thesaurus, all about how you combine the different flavours in the book. This is the end paper, so that you can see how things work together, judging by where they are on the wheel. And great for, I gave it to a friend who's a great cook and then kept a copy for myself, and probably she's used hers more than I have, to be honest. A book that's beautiful in the hand, Raymond Chandler. A selection of his books together, The Big Sleep and Farewell My Lovely. Beautifully balanced, nice picture of the author, and the end papers are really the logo for the printers, for the publishers, Modern Library, but it's rather beautiful in itself. And as I say, the book is beautifully produced, sits lightly in your hand and invites reading. And finally, end papers for a couple who were artists. The story of Sybil Andrews and Cyril Power. You can see this is one of their classic designs, and inside more of the same, together with part of the story of the book. Sybil and Cyril, Cutting Through Time by Jenny Uglow, and the publisher, no surprise, Faber and Faber. Now maps. And I'm showing to you a map of a fictional village of Tilling, which features in this book. The complete map on Lucia, E.F. Benson, Volume 1. So It's a fictional village that has been made up for the purposes of this book, and it's all to do with a woman called Mrs. Map. Map, we're looking for a map. Design in the book. Playing words there, and also Lucia. Both of them are incredibly strong women who want to run the arts and the local council and be kind of, in a sense, the queen of the village, the local English village. Very humorous, full of power struggles about fripperies and trivialities, but two determined, strong women in their machinations to get into power as it existed in their time. So, Map and Lucia, totally recommended for a read. Delightful to take on holiday, take to the beach and have a chortle. Map. Can we count this as Map? The book is called Map. It's by Wisława Szymborska, the poet. I really am struggling, as you can tell, for maps because I don't tend to read books on travel, nor books which are fantasy and have invented a fictional world. But I do recommend that as a book of poetry. In fact, I picked it up to look at it for this tag and I started reading the poems again and just loved them. They're very simple and yet thoughtful, provoking. And finally, for maps, The Power of Display, a giant, heavy book which is about the classics of laying out an exhibition. And it's by Mary Ann Staniszewski. Very classic book on exhibitions, and the maps in this are layouts of buildings. How can somebody come into an exhibition and go around it, and what effect is that going to have? So you'll see a drawing produced by the curator of the layout, and then you have a photograph, for example, of what the actual exhibition looks like. And those are my map section. Best naked hardcover. This book, Jane of Lantern Hill by Ella Montgomery, is quite old. It belonged to my grandmother and it has faded over the years. And this patina is why I particularly like this. The design itself is quite simple, but the colour was originally a green. If you look inside the end papers, you get more of a sense of that green. And then you can see the patchiness of the yellowy green and how the green has kind of faded more towards that yellow, and I particularly love that shade of yellowy green. And the other book in this category is slightly similar shade but more yellow, and it's clever because it's a history of art without men by Katie Hessel, and without men is outlined in white and invisible. So it's very clever. I must say, I think this book is beautifully packaged. It's solid and heavy. It's a marketing marvel. It is referencing a title of a classic book, The Story of Art by E.H. Gombrich, which is a classical book to read on the history of art. And Katie Hessel's point is that there's very few women in it, and so she has titled her book. Beautifully marketed. I'm not so sure about the content. I'm struggling to read it because it is written with high emotion, where women tend to be regarded as sort of saintly and all the men are bad almost. It's very emotional and emotive, and I think that takes some of the research by other people that she's pulling on. It kind of slants it and oversimplifies. But anyway, I'm still trying to read that book, so I can't give you my ultimate final version. Those are the books I want to recommend for their cover design. Now we come to the best back cover, and I have 3 contenders for this category. Here's one. The front's not bad either. Snapshots. So the book is about how particular painters used photography, bon art to vuillard. I have to hold it back here for you to see the whole of it. It's a coffee table book, wrap around, And on the front you have men facing you with the camera, and then on the back are women and a guy, a woman and a guy walking away. So that's quite pleasant. The end pages, covers are similarly wonderful old pictures. And inside the whole book is full of photographs, and then showing how a painter made that into, used it as a basis for composition for his pictures. This is the back cover I love, from Poems on the Underground, and it's because it is a poster design for the Underground made by one of my favourite poster makers. And let me see if I can find the design name in particular. I've had it framed and on my walls before because I just loved it. Detail from The Lure of the Underground, a poster by Alfred Leete, Leete, 1927. Joyful, wonderful. All these people being attracted magnetically towards the underground. And my final book for back cover design has also got an amazing front cover. It's totally wrap around, to be honest. So this is the front, this is the back. It's my massive gaze band quilts, and it is definitely a coffee table, if not a dining room table, because it's heavy and wonderful. And inside also it's end papers, show details from the life of the woman who sewed the quilts, probably what would be used as backing sacks. And in fact some of the material would have been the Arkansas rice growers, and that's the kind of material I got to use for backing, and maybe even sometimes towards the front of the quilts, because the quilts were not made to be just delicate, they were made to keep out the cold. And that was particularly important because they were living in many wooden cabins which were uninsulated and unheated. I've showed you the middle of a book. Can you guess what the book is? It's a design classic, Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Back's pretty good too. But I'm showing this because the example I showed you was the chapter heading. And the whole book is full of black and white handwritten tips, or handwritten font, it's hard to know. These little examples and drawings of why and how creativity emerges. His particular style of poetry where he would block out words and then just leave some and call those found poems. Wonderful all the way through. Simple, easy to read, and one of these books that is made for adults but doesn't believe that it has to be so serious that it can't have the joy of a well-designed children's book. Steal Like an Artist. Along the same vein, How to Be an Artist by Jerry Saltz, the well-known New York art critic. And again, similar kind of idea. It's quite colourful, it's got lots of pictures, some words, but each time he comes to a new topic, you get a picture to inspire, to give you thought, full of illustrations all the way throughout. It's probably not fair to call them chapters, they're more like thoughts, a list of thoughts and inspirations. That's a new section. But you can see it's starting off with clarity and very well illustrated throughout. How to Be an Artist. I totally recommend this for anybody who's interested in art, and maybe even at school level. Just that sense of talking encouragingly to you and down to earth. And finally, one that is all about words. David Lodge, The Art of Fiction. And why I like the start of his chapters is not because there's pictures, there's a significant lack of pictures. But it's not as if there is no design. Each chapter he begins with examples of what he's trying to illustrate. So, for example, here we have interior monologue, and we have a very large excerpt from James Joyce Ulysses, but it could be lots of different writers. A Sense of the Past by John Fowles, The French Lieutenant's Woman, and sometimes it's several quotes and then he starts to talk about it. But you have the example right in front of you, something that has inspired, and then he explains it and the theory behind it. And I love that. Now we open the nominations for the best spine. I like this. Marconi. Biography of the man, and the font is exactly right. That kind of Italian's 1930s style, very modern. So I love that. I like the move between black and white and colour in this one, the art of worship, art of curating worship, where it starts off black and white, goes to colour, and also the way you have the up there and then art. The lettering is changing height. Then what about a cartoon on the edge of the spine of a book? This one by James Thurber for Dog Lovers Everywhere. That's also on the front. And this book is from 1950. So again, it's slightly peeling green, but picture on the spine as it fits a book by a cartoonist. This one is hinting at the meaning, Haunted by Christ by Richard Harries, and it's about writers who had this sense, modern writers and the struggle for faith. People who queried it, fought against it, thought about it. A vast array: Emily Dickinson, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Stevie Smith, T.S. Eliot, Auden, Golding, R.S. Thomas, Edwin Muir, so it goes on. But the book has that haunted by behind the lettering of the author's name. So I think that's very descriptive and very appropriate. Another old book, Uckridge, a P.G. Wodehouse book, and we have the emblem of the publishers, Herbert and Jenkins, which, as every P.G. Wodehouse fan will know, is actually his main publisher, and a lot of his first editions come from that. But it's quite a size for being the emblem of the publishers. And finally, Funny Business is a book with lots of excerpts about a variety of entertainers, mostly British but also American. And then I like the spine because it has a lot of the faces down the side. So Funny Business, and you have all those famous faces. Best drawing in a cover. You only need to see this and you get a sense. There's an unhappy schoolboy here, and you would be right. Back in the Jug Again by Geoffrey Willans and illustrated by Ronald Searle. Famous for doing the Centrinians, and lots of drawings inside are similar line of a school where things are not a happy place. For example, Guide to Grown-Ups. And of course, those kind of teachers just make you think very much of Centrinians, so I love that. And secondly, a whole range of books that are re-releases of Virginia Woolf, done by Vintage, have got fantastic illustrations here, which are done by an artist with a name I'm going to struggle to pronounce, but it's worth hearing. It's Aino Maija Metsola. I'll need to put that up on screen so you can understand. But these, I actually got this in an exhibition of modernist art, so it seemed totally appropriate to get a Virginia Woolf at that time. And this is To the Lighthouse. But there have been reprints of her books with similar illustrations. They're fabulous. Light beautifully fits in the hand. Look at this, the size of two hands. And those are my nominations for beautiful drawings in the cover. And finally, the most beautiful covers. This book is called My Creative Space, full of ideas on how to get a space in your home or just maybe slightly outside it that is going to inspire you, and what should be in it that will inspire you. This cover, well, when I look at this space, what's not to make you think you're going to be creative? You've got a lovely open view, an open window, fresh air, space for books, a flat surface to write on or plan things or do drawings or whatever you're going to do. So I do love the cover of this book. It speaks to me. Inside, of course, is full of places where you can work and how to lay out the room, practical suggestions, but also some places that are frankly idealistic and not within the budget of most people. But there are ideas as well. For example, to use the walls around you so that you're looking at space. You can get up and scroll an idea so that it occurs to you and stay with it while you're creating. So it's a lovely book, big and heavy and fabulous, but the cover says it. Creative Space. Then a book which could also be labelled recommended in terms of font. Love and Salt, a spiritual friendship shared in letters. Genuine. It's not a fiction book. I love the different space. I love the different elements that are on it, and that it's looking typed. There's a typewriter and so forth. And another book by Muriel Spark. I love this. It has all the elements of the story, which is a little quick to read book recommended. The Girls of Slender Means, and it is all about a particular time and space, 1950s, in London, living in a place with an unexploded bomb nearby. So all the different elements of the story are in there. Then classic Black, White and Red to do with film. Love this. And this is about women screenwriters. And finally, of my covers I like, so big I can hardly lift it, U2 show about their skill in putting together shows, all the different elements, encyclopedic knowledge for its time. It will of course be outdated, but that format of having lots of square photographs is a winner when they're especially so colorized. And of course that's the kind of thing that is now the backbone of Instagram. But this book, I think it was kind of 2000. Let me just quick look see. A few years after 2000. And finally, the bad ones. And once again we see this book, which was The Map in Lucia, but this picture is totally irrelevant to the stories, which are about villages full of people, the characters. This is out on a sort of moorland. It just does not fit the stories. And I want to say I am extremely disappointed in this publisher. Everyman is a great, but the artist they chose for their P.G. Wodehouse books, it just leaves a lot to be desired. I just think it's pretty horrendous. But the worst of all, and I end with Jane Austen. Not there's a problem with her writing, but this particular book cover is rather a horror. In fact, I included it in a video about Jane Austen. It's done by Wordsworth Classics, but there's all sorts of reasons, if you watch my video, for why it's not a particularly good picture. Those are my collections, 4 covers, both fantastic for some reason, and then a few not so great there at the end. Just to say that there is one particular person who is a booktuber and who makes the most astonishing videos of books, where he lovingly tracks over the cover and opens the book gradually and lets you look at the contents. And he also tends to buy particularly gorgeous illustrations and editions of books, and that is Pontus Presents. So please, if you like looking at good books and the art of a good book production, check out his channel, Pontus Presents. You will not be disappointed. I am amazed to find that One particular person does not seem to have done this tag, and therefore I want to tag the Lepa of BookTube, the self-proclaimed pariah of BookTube, Steve Donoghue, who, along with all his 15,000 or so followers, feels the need to be tagged and asked, so please, dear Lepa, will you do this tag? I hope you enjoyed this. I'll close my cover now.